What's up, everyone? I'm excited to have Dr. Loretta with us here today, and she is all about helping people figure out the chemicals inside their brain and how to essentially like reverse engineer those chemicals because those chemicals, such as like the big one nowadays is like dopamine, like everyone's on their phones and getting dopamine drips, how that could be not good for you. I believe like you're what you do is like you help people understand these chemicals and how they could use them to their like advantage. Is that like kind of like what you're doing with your work?
Yes, exactly. And I love the way you said re-engineer. I've never heard it described that way before, so I always like to hear a new view. And I'm glad that you didn't say, I'm not on this bandwagon of like blaming your phone and saying dopamine is bad. So thank you. That was perfect.
Sweet. And how did you get into this? Like what was like you had to be interested in the brain to go down this rabbit hole of learning about like the I know you mentioned like dopamine and oxytocin are like the two that I'm most familiar with, and that's because I have a pregnant wife at home, so lots of oxytocin in our house right now with her situation.
Sure. Yeah. Very good. So how I got involved. I literally remember I was 17 years old. I was in my first college psychology classes in this giant auditorium, and there was a giant screen. This is long before PowerPoint was invented, with little monkeys on the screen. And so, actually, it's the monkey research that has always interested me. I don't call it brain science, and it's definitely not what people in neuroscience do. But people who studied animal brains observed how these chemicals work in animals. And
Mhm.
when you know how it works in animals, it's amazing to see the parallel with humans because it's the same chemical controlled by the same brain structures, and it's the same behaviors that we see in daily life. It's just that monkeys can't suppress the behavior as easily as we can or cover it up with verbal chatter and say, oh, that's not what I was thinking.
So
So,
essentially you have like
um,
these so like these chemicals are like from like the caveman days or like when our daughter was first born, we're like, oh, she still has her lizard brain.
well, we always have it, and it
Mhm.
always has far more power than we think. What happens is we have this big human cortex on top of it. I call it the pink fluffy brain because that's what you see in images, but that has much less power when we think. And in terms of your newborn child, the brain is born unwired. So when it's born, it only knows how to cry, and that's not from the big pink fluffy brain. That's from the animal part of the brain that can feel its own needs, but has no skill whatsoever to meet its own needs except to just explode with threat chemicals, cortisol. And so that urge to just explode with threat chemicals is something we're born with and something we always have. And it's just that we have to build layers of learning to manage it, which is the challenge of life.
Right. So the four chemicals I know I read about what you're doing is dopamine, which is people know because of social media, serotonin, oxytocin's like the love one, and then cortisol people know it's like that's the stressor. So those are like the big four. Is that like how did you come
No,
up with those?
so cortisol is what I would call an unhappy chemical. So of four happy chemicals, you left out endorphin. People generally hear about that from the exercise perspective. And serotonin, people generally hear about from the antidepressants perspective. So antidepressants are alleged to raise your serotonin. So, I was not trained in this from an academic perspective because I was a professor of international management for 20 years, and I was trained to learn about other cultures and trade with other countries. And from so much travel and study of other countries, I was able to see that every place has the same problems because I used to think, oh, our problems are terrible and I'm going to just go to some other place and everything's going to be good. And it's not that way at all. And also, when I was trained in social sciences, I thought my children will be happy and my students will be happy because I'm going to do everything according to social science. And that didn't work. So that's what motivated me to go back to the original research on the animal brain. And I heard one little mention of one chemical and one little mention of another chemical. And I just kept digging. So nobody was putting this together. And I chose those four chemicals because they are the ones whose job is exclusively to motivate you to take action to meet survival needs, unlike a sex hormone or dozens and even hundreds, thousands of other chemicals we have.
So those chemicals that we like mentioned are kind of like the four pillars for like emotional regulation.
Yes, but when you say regulation, so they are the four good feelings. And then we have bad feelings. And good feelings are not designed to make us happy. They evolve to motivate us to take action, to move forward to meet a survival need. So if you think about a Stone Age ancestor and they're in a cave and it's snowing and they're out of firewood, so why would you go out into the snow to get firewood is because you anticipate that you're going to feel better, even though it feels bad when you go in the snow, but you're going to feel better. And that's dopamine, is like, I'm going to go get something that's going to meet my needs. And dopamine makes you feel good while you're going for it, even if you feel bad in that moment. Now, unhappy chemicals motivate us to pull back. So let's say you leave your cave and you smell a predator, then threat chemicals motivate you to pull back. So the regulation that you mentioned is either going forward or pulling back, and that's all built from neural pathways that are wired from past experience. So anything that felt good in my past, I built wiring to turn on more of that. And anything that felt bad in my past, I built wiring to turn on that.
So essentially, when we're first born, we don't have any wiring. So the wiring that's
Yes.
developed as we go through childhood to adulthood dictates how someone could respond to certain situations versus a different person could respond completely different.
Exactly. And the perfect example of that is like a roller coaster. Some people love it and some people hate
Oh,
it.
I hate them.
Me too.
I just feel sick
But
afterwards.
yeah, my daughter went on one. It was funny. And I stood and watched with her son. So, he's growing up seeing his mother enjoying a roller coaster. And we were trying to get excited with him and, display the positive attitude.
I'm not sure if it's like the roller coaster that makes me the most uneasy or waiting in the line to get on the roller coaster because I have more time to like think about it.
Yes. So anticipation of threat and anticipation of reward are both huge motivators, and this is what differentiates humans from animals, because animals are more in the moment, and humans with the big pink fluffy brain, we have the capacity to anticipate. And sometimes it's good that it makes you think twice before you do something stupid, but it could also be bad, like if you have to take a test and you're having a lot of bad thoughts, does your fear motivate you to study? Or does it just motivate you to, make a bad choice?
Hmm. So from what I'm not sure if this is right, but basically like our brains haven't really evolved much from like caveman days
This
based
is,
from these chemicals.
yes, I would say yes. Even, the chemicals go back. So that's when I started reading about it. First, I started with chimps. Then I went to monkeys, then I went to wolves and dogs and cows. And, you go to smaller and smaller animals, and it's the same core mammal brain that has this same operating system of a good feeling chemical motivates you to move forward, and a bad feeling chemical motivates you to pull back. And it's the ability to generate alternatives. Like I said, if you have to go into a test, is like, I feel good about this, but I feel bad about this, and how do we weigh them? But that's just a small part of our brain. The animal part is huge.
Right. And that's essentially what you help others with is to help them understand these chemicals and how to navigate these feelings, even if someone is older and they have a lot of wiring, how to essentially rewire their circuits so that way once if they're like in a stressful situation that would be like cortisol, like how to I guess like put like a do you help them put like a formula together, like help us walk it through the process of like how you work
Well,
with
I'm
someone.
not a coach, so I mostly write books.
Okay.
And I make other resources for people who don't like to read books. So I have an online course and a lot of videos, for example, and infographics, things like that. But the idea is, yes, how to rewire your brain. And I have learned a lot from animal trainers. So it's amazing that animal trainers are able to teach an animal a complex behavior that the animal doesn't even understand by giving them tiny rewards for tiny steps. And that's most of our daily lives. Like, let's use a familiar example that a person has an addiction and they want to get over the addiction. And you're telling your brain, well, you should feel good without opening a bottle of wine. But your brain doesn't understand that because it's just not wired that way. So the challenge is just like an animal, like how would you wire that in by designing tiny steps and taking tiny steps toward that?
So essentially figuring out a reward system to help others rewire their circuits in their brain is
Yes,
the
and
key.
each person has to develop their own reward system. So if like most of the, I think, bad advice people get today is instead of opening a bottle of wine, you should run a mile. But your brain says, well, that doesn't sound very exciting. I think I'd rather open a bottle of wine. So you should at least offer it something fun. So a simple example would be, if you um, go, you first, I use a simple example like comedy. So the time when I would have had a glass of wine, I will watch 15 minutes of comedy. And, if I spend 2 days in a row without opening wine, then I will watch a movie and eat a bowl of popcorn. So everyone can give themselves a doable incentive structure. And it works with your mammal brain to say, oh, I can feel good. You want to train your brain to feel good in a new way rather than saying, oh, you shouldn't like that.
Was there something that like inspired you to like look into all of this? I don't think we've touched on that.
Yeah, so many steps throughout life, but I came from a very unhappy home. And like many people, I think, the brain easily defaults to unhappiness. So every child sort of, I think, observes the unhappiness of their parents. And then we have mirror neurons that suck in the responses of those around us. And in different situations, you get different results. In my situation, I was sort of expected to be like a support for my mother to help her with her unhappiness, which of course I failed at because a child can't do that. And it's funny that a lot of comedians, Jerry Seinfeld and Mark Maron, for example, have explained similar situations with their fathers. So um, I liked psychology when I discovered it because to me it was at least something other than this unhealthy mindset that I grew up with, which was sort of like it's your fault your mother is unhappy. And if you're happy, then you must not be doing your fair share of the suffering. That's, sort of what I got. So, and I think a lot of people had something like that. So then when I got psychology, I thought, oh, this is going to fix everything. But then it did not fix everything. So again, that's why I took early retirement and kept digging.
Yeah. I think a lot of people grew up in unhappy households, myself included. And as a child, you're always wondering, like, what am I doing wrong?
Yes,
Like
exactly,
everything is wrong. And then as you like grow up, you like do things, and like if something doesn't go your way, like, did I do something wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why is this happening? Because I mean, kids are very innocent.
yes, exactly.
So,
Would you like to apply all of this to money?
we could. I mean, essentially, the show is about just having people who've taken an unconventional path to find
Okay.
success in their lives. So you've definitely
Oh,
uh,
okay.
took a U-turn, starting off
Yeah.
from where you are to where you are now on what you're doing. But I
Yeah.
mean, money is a big topic because it scares a lot of people, especially I was talking to someone who is a in like the he's like a sports psychologist, and he talked about when people see things going up with investing, they think it's just going
Yes.
to continue going up, and when it's going down, their brains think it's just going to go down forever.
That's
Uh, and Warren
exactly.
Buffett talks about you have to rewire your brain for the opposite. You have to be happy when things are going down and a little upset when things are going up, because when things go up in investing, or whether you want to buy a new pair of shoes or food, like you get upset when prices go up. But when investments go up, people get happy. And it's actually like an opposite game with investing, which is why I think a lot of people struggle with it.
Yes, exactly. But you were talking about how people get wired in childhood. And to me, yeah, very important. But of all the problems I had, I did not have a lot of money problems when I was young. So I have to really credit my parents because they grew up in absolute poverty,
Hmm.
and their parents, were just, poverty from the beginning of time. And it's not that we had money, but we never had like money crisis.
Hmm.
And I have learned that a lot of people with a lot more money than me would have a money crisis for a variety of reasons. And so it's just like you just drink in whatever was going on around you when you were young. So, one pattern that I hear about from a lot of people is that feast or famine mentality, that when somebody has money and then they just go out and splurge it, you know. So I was not exposed to that. So my parents were my mother that was very, very, very frugal.
Mm.
So I learned to be very, very, very frugal. And later in life, that gave me the independence, like even to take early retirement and to just say, I don't believe in this stuff anymore. I'm going to find something else.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people get something such as money, and if they don't come for money, then they don't know how to respond when they're in a different situation that than they're used to, and they could feel like, oh no, like my friends don't like me anymore, or I got to get rid of this. I'm uncomfortable, so let me spend it all and I'll get it all back, and then just keep going in the same loop over and over and over again, and then eventually, they're just standing exactly where they started because they've just been running in a circle.
Yeah, yeah. So, and so many different reasons. So, you mentioned my friends don't like me, like people don't want you to get ahead of them. But there are other possible reasons. One of them is um, feeling like you have to buy things for people in order to have respect or
Hmm.
social alliances. But another one that really blew me away, I had a colleague who told me that when she was young, the electricity would go out in her house because her mother didn't pay the bill. And they actually had the money sitting in the bank.
Mm.
but her mother was just too flaky to pay the bills. So this colleague of mine took over paying the bills at a very young age because her mother was just irresponsible. So kids are exposed to all kinds of crazy things. And each of us, when we find ourselves doing something we don't want, we need to think about, how am I just repeating what I was exposed to when I was young? Because we're all doing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you rewire yourself when your example is a bad example?
Yeah, which is, of course, everyone, because all parents have some bad example, and we sort of go to that. So how do you rewire yourself? So first, you design your preferred alternative. So you what I don't know if you want to suggest an example.
Let's just say someone grows up in a family where they're like, oh, they always have money problems. Money doesn't grow on trees. Like, you can never get ahead. The world's out to get them. Like, tax
Oh.
the rich. The rich are the problem.
Oh, a hopeless attitude about money. And that gets in the way of them taking action. They don't do anything to get what they need and to establish their career because they have negative expectations. So, if a person is able to be aware of that thought loop, so then the next step is to have a positive thought loop. And what would be the positive thought loop? Well, usually, I do some coaching, and I don't want to tell a person what their positive thought loop is because it has to be believable to you. So, there are a lot of positive affirmations that people hear. It's like, I can be rich, money will fall into my lap. And I think that's not, to me, I don't believe that. So to me, you have to take action. And our brain only takes action when we believe it will work. So each person can come up with the action that they believe will work. So
Mm.
the example I always use is, I'm going to apply for 3 jobs a day or apply for 3 whatever a day. Put yourself out, take a risk 3 times a day. And then you define a reward. What will I give myself after each time I put myself out? So one person can say, I'm going to, and I mean, let me use a taboo. I'm going to have a cigarette after I do it, or like I'm going to have a dish of ice cream after I do it, or I'm going to have 1 glass of wine a day, but I won't let myself have it until I've done my outreaches. But you could also do, well, I will not have my first cup of coffee for the day until I do one outreach. And then I will have my morning coffee, midday coffee after another. So everyone can structure it in their own way so that they don't have to drink a whole bottle of scotch to get themselves to do it.
Hmm. Have you found some people believe they're doing something that's like a reward system, but it's actually like a negative reward system, such as I guess it comes to mind like if you're playing sports and you have a coach who's like, all right, you got to do 20 push-ups because you did this wrong. So it's like making some like, if my coach told me to do that, it's like, oh, he's like my punishment is push-ups, but push-ups are actually good because it makes you stronger.
Yes, exactly. So we get dysfunctional reward systems in all kinds of ways. So the examples that I always think of, one of them is we really need enough sleep in order to have a functional life at all. And a lot of people resist sleep because, like, when you're young, you think, I don't want to go to sleep because my parents want me to. So they fight sleep and then they get wired to fight sleep. Another interesting example is a person says, I had a bad day today, so therefore I'm going to let myself do X, whatever your X is. And so then they get trained to believe they had a bad day every day because that gives them an excuse to do the bad thing. So we all have dysfunctional reward systems, and we all have to really notice. And like going back to children, so our Wiring does not get built from conscious analysis of how you think you should be wired. It does not get built from genetics. It gets built from experience. So anything that's going on for you when something good happens, you connect all the neurons active at that moment. Anything when a bad chemical is released, you connect all the neurons active at that moment. So we just get wired really by the random chance of things that happen for us.
So let's just say like someone is doing all of the right things in like their life and they're not getting the reward that they're hoping from their efforts. How what's your advice to those sort of folks that are going through like the struggles such as like in high school, like maybe you're not getting as good of grades as someone, but that you know they're cheating. And how do you like stick true to making sure that you don't start falling into the same traps that other people are doing to like cut corners per se?
Yeah, good question. That's really like 10 questions. So
Let's talk
I'll
about it.
start I'll start tackling it and then you can follow up. So, first you said, I'm doing all the right things and not getting the rewards. So, this is a very common thought loop today. And this is based on the brain's desire to feel a peak experience all the time. And that comes from modern culture. We are not designed to have a peak experience all the time. So if you think, oh, yeah, I should get all these great things and everybody else is having this great life and I'm not, but I'm doing all the right things, then it feels so unfair. And then you go down a path of negative thinking. But the reality is that our happy chemicals only turn on in small drips, in small moments, and then you have to keep taking action. So if you think other people are getting these good feelings all the time, they are not. Even if you think someone's got it going on and they seem like they have a very successful situation, you don't know their whole story. And anyway, even if you did, their brain is not. I use a simple example. If you were the alpha chimpanzee, you are constantly being challenged by all the beta chimpanzees. So you don't have a great life. You are like being challenged and having to fight all the time. So they are full of cortisol and they're not getting a great life.
Hmm. So it's almost like be careful what you actually want because you might get it and realize that's not what you want.
Exactly. And yet it's normal to want that because our brain is designed to seek and we keep seeking. And the way I learn this is from animal videos. So if you watch good animal videos, they show that every kind of mammal has a social hierarchy and they're constantly working to rise in the social hierarchy. And I have a website with lots of explanations and links to some animal videos. And the videos then got me reading books about animal hierarchies. So I have a reading list about this that starts with the video at my website, innermammalinstitute.org/reading list, all one word. And I wrote 10 books because I keep writing more and more about how hard it is to really manage this brain that wants good feelings all the time, but is not designed to release the good feelings all the time. And two of the books are about the frustration of social comparison, which is again a natural animal impulse.
This is your website.
Thank you. And while you're doing that, oh, thank you. um, while you're doing that, I will explain um, why animals are so competitive with each other. Okay. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Still, yeah.
So which one is it?
Yeah, that right. Yeah, 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 that's it. Why don't you kill that on the bottom right. On the bottom right, just click got it. Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. And I don't know why there are black spots over it on my side, but yes, this is it. So I'm sorry, what was your question?
Oh, like where on your website would you want people to look at these?
Oh. Well, just so you know, any of those that you're showing now, a person can click and get the rest of the story about how that chemical works. And why don't you scroll to the top so they could see the top of the page? Great. Okay. Now, if you could go to the window, the navigation window, and inter where you have no above that. What do you call that? That navig yeah. No, above where it says innermammalinstitute.org.
The bra
Yeah, put yeah,
right
put
here.
slash reading list. Yeah. Yeah. So this is just so I have a lot of books about um, monkey behavior and how we've inherited it. None of them explain it the way my books do because it's just they just don't tell the truth about this, frankly. But I do list the videos.
What are
It's
they not saying that is useful?
so so much. So first, by the way, if you I have a book on this that explains the whole problem with the model that you're getting from academic psychology. That book is it's my most recent book. It's called Why You're Unhappy: Biology versus Politics. You could get to it if you have innermammalinstitute.org/why.
Oh, I found it. Here, I'll put it back up. I think it's fun to share.
Great.
And
Yeah.
we have the resources, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yes. Okay. This is the new book.
I think this would be good for a lot of people in 2025. A lot of people are upset with what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what academic psychology tells you is that you're supposed to be happy all the time. And if you're not, it's a disorder. And you're supposed to get treatment to fix it. And they don't tell you how the animal brain is not meant to create happy chemicals all the time. And they mostly teach you to blame society and to expect society to fix it for you. And they also teach you what I call the disease model of mental health, which, people sometimes call it a chemical imbalance. You haven't heard me use this word chemical imbalance, but that model is starting finally to be discredited. There was never any science behind it. So the whole idea, it's just a way to sell drugs. I mean,
Yeah, the pharmaceutical business is big business.
yes, and whether it's legal drugs or illegal drugs, the bottom line is that this fast, easy happiness is just not how the brain works. And there's really no alternative but knowing how your brain works.
Yeah, I mean, everything comes down to holding yourself accountable and then educating yourself in regards to how you respond to certain things because everyone's brain and wiring is a little bit different. So like what works for me may not work well for you and vice versa. So you could get the best advice, be like, "Oh, I did this with Dr. Loretta and it worked well for me. You need to do the same thing." That's not really the case because every person is different. Everyone has different wiring, everyone has different DNA, everyone has a different uh
Yeah.
background and different
Yes,
story.
exactly. But one thing we have in common that I should explain. So animals have social rivalry. Again, I was explaining it in the nature videos. And when you understand the social rivalry of animals, you can see it in yourself and say, oh my gosh, I'm driving myself crazy over nothing. And everybody else is doing that too. From the little child who didn't get invited to a birthday party to, the middle-aged person who hoped for a promotion and didn't get it.
Hmm.
Oops. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Family emergency?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how to shut it. Okay,
Yeah, it
sorry.
happens to
Uh,
everyone.
yeah. Yeah, sorry. I didn't know. I have the ringer off, but somehow they called in a different way that overrid the ringer. Um, so I'm hoping it's family good news, but we'll see. Um, so, so the social rivalry of animals. Um, is something you can learn from any introductory course or book on evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology. And the
Mhm.
bottom line is it's all about reproductive success in the term of biologists, which means that animals compete like hell for mating opportunity. And I didn't know anything about this. And I thought, wow, that really explains a lot. So it's not just males, it's females too, in different ways. But animals are not consciously aware of genes, and yet natural selection builds a brain that rewards you with good feelings when you do things that spread your genes. And spreading your genes includes, from the animal brain's perspective, it includes attractiveness, which is why people drive themselves crazy over small minutia about their attractiveness. It includes the animal that gets more resources, then they win mating contests. So that's why people drive themselves crazy about getting resources. And it includes protection for the young so that they can survive long enough to reproduce. And that's why people drive themselves crazy over protecting the young.
Mhm. So all of this comes down to like resources would mean like having nice things or a lot of money would be like a common one.
Yes.
And then people drive themselves crazy to get those things. And then eventually, what it sounds like is they could have so much cortisol in their system, it ends up killing them attempting to get all of these things.
Yes. And and it also maybe doesn't make them happy.
Mm.
Yeah, and or yeah, they take big risks to get it. But on the other hand, we need goals to stimulate our dopamine. So this is the art of life. Is like if you just say, "Well, I'm not going to care about anything," you're not going to get dopamine. You're not going to be you're not going to have a pride of rising in the social dominance hierarchy the way animals try to do. So that's why, I keep writing more books on this. It's complex. Let's use oxytocin. So oxytocin is protection, but we really desire to be protected by others. So there's a cliche about like going to a bar where everybody knows your name, and that's supposed to be like, I want to be surrounded by a group. But then when people are surrounded by a group, then they get annoyed by the group. So all of these have a complex trade-off where we want it, but we don't want it. And that's why my book, Why You're Unhappy, explains that.
We want it, but we actually don't want it.
We want it, but we don't. But then when we have it, it annoys us. So we don't want to do the work to get it. But then when we lose it, then we feel bad without it. So we want it.
It almost sounds like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well, a more positive way of saying that is our happy chemicals are not designed to be on all the time.
Mhm.
They're only designed to reward us with small drips when we take action to meet our needs. So when we understand how our need for each of the chemicals works, then we can keep taking small steps and activating small drips.
Got it. And the first place you said recommending starting on your website, the Inner Mammal Institute.org, you mentioned why you're unhappy, biology versus politics. Is that where you would recommend most people start?
No, I'm only bringing that up because you are raising those good questions.
Okay.
But the starting book, um, uh, uh, and I think that's right below all those animals. If you scroll down, I have
On
to,
your homepage?
yeah, on my homepage. My introductory book is called Why You're Unhappy, Biology versus Politics. No, I said it wrong. My introductory book is called Habits of a Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and Endorphin Levels. Oh, you need to scroll down on my homepage to where it says our books. Okay.
Yeah, it says
And
habits of a happy brain. When you know how they
yeah,
work
yeah.
in the state of
So
nature, you can
that's the
design sustainable
introductory.
ways to turn them on today.
Thank you. Yes. So that's the introductory book that explains everything in a nice, simple but scientific way. Now, if a person wants a really simple, like that can be read by a 14-year-old, that's a real workbook with only the stuff you need to manage your emotions without all the science. The one on the bottom right, 14 Days to Sustainable Happiness. That's a workbook that I self-published. And so I can even, if somebody wants to buy bulk copies for their group, I can make it available to a group at a lower price.
Awesome. Sounds like everyone needs to figure out. Seems like something that uh they teach kids about it, like, regulate your emotions, like happy, sad, frustrated, and things like that, but actually having like a general understanding of how that works and how that relates to how someone's been wired from childhood to adulthood and everywhere in between is definitely a difference maker in terms of getting those continuous slow drips versus looking for the life in the fast lane mentality.
Exactly. And even to go a step further to say that the slow drips don't even have to be continuous, because what I explain is something I call neutral. So, neutral is when you're not going forward or reverse. And our brain was designed to be in neutral because forward is like, let's say a lion is looking around for a gazelle that it can catch. So if it just runs after everything, it's not going to catch anything. It has to look around for a really good target before it invests its energy. Otherwise, it's just going to starve. So that's what we're designed to do. It's like I'm in neutral and I'm looking around for a good target. And then I say, yes, that's it. I'm going to go after that.
I love it. Well, I'm definitely going to I'm gonna go get the first book you mentioned, Habits of a Happy Brain, and read it and learn about it because I find this very interesting and I believe this is really important work that you're doing that it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people in this space, so very unconventional of you.
Thank you. It definitely is unconventional.
So,
And I don't even think it's that radical. But I think it's what it is like halfway between the left wing view and the right wing view. So both views think, oh, you're not one of us.
hmm. Well, you have to understand both sides in order to form a educational thought on something. You can't just look at
Mm,
one way or the other. You gotta figure out
mm.
what both sides are doing and come to a conclusion, regardless of what the circumstance may be.
Yeah, and I didn't, do it to be in the middle. I just did it by looking at the facts.
Hmm.
But
Well,
yeah.
the facts, the science, and what you've found from all of your research and time and resources that you put into this.
Yes.
Well, awesome. I love the conversation. I love that you came on, and we'll see everyone next time. Bye, everyone.